Show's on road.
All right, it's going live. It's going live. We're live. We're live for another Tech Talks.
Yeah, and I guess today we're going to be talking about replacements for Jamboard, and specifically one. We're going to be talking about Miro. So we've been doing some testing and some looking because, as some may know and some may not know, Jamboard, rest in peace, was basically axed by Google after a beautiful, long, and illustrious life.
The thing I didn't know about Jamboard until they closed it was the web interface for Jamboard was just an interface for a touchscreen product that Google made. That was the actual Jamboard, was the hardware that you buy. But nobody bought it. They just used the web version, which I think is why they stopped supporting it. So
That's amazing. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Which shows what I know.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you go to a conference, you use Jamboard. Some people were running it in their courses for ways to kind of run synchronous activities, ways to engage students that weren't just polling or having them do kind of reflections on their own.
Yeah.
Kind of a nice, we'll call it like community whiteboard.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to find an analog, something that kind of meets that need. And some of the things that we really liked about Jamboard, super easy to share. You didn't need an account to use it.
just a link, put the link in Zoom or in Canvas or wherever, and people could just start contributing.
Absolutely. And I should be clear, students didn't need an account.
Right.
We did, but
The owner needed to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Which you're gonna find in any of the stuff that we're kind of looking at. But yeah, that easy to share. We don't want there to be a login that, there's a barrier, yada, yada, yada. Let's make it as simple as possible. And then the second thing was just usability, like the tools within it allowed for a lot of like variation in experience. Though I mostly saw people like using sticky notes. So in Jamboard, you were able to click a little icon, pull over a little sticky note and type a thought in there. And then as the person running the meeting or others within the meeting, you could organize those kind of in this physical or quasi-physical digital space. All of my sticky notes that go and kind of meet this theme, I'm going to put over here and these over here. And then, hey, as a group, we get to reflect on them. There's like a lot of cool stuff that you can do. But you kind of get the idea that it was very free form. And so we found another tool that we think kind of meets the need. It's got a little bit more complex features baked in, which we'll kind of keep it to the things that were similar to Jamboard. But if you like it, ended up using it, you've got a lot more options in that space. But again, that's kind of the framework we've been looking at. So we found a tool called Miro, which is a pretty cool tool because of a couple of things. So first, it meets that sharing requirement, which we'll talk about today, how easy it is to share. But it's also got a free option for us as educators, which is great. You never see that. So I'm going to show you like how to do that part to start, right? Because you want to be using, at least even with your testing, the most, bells and whistles version. And then we'll jump in and then we'll play around. So with that, this is Miro. So I just went to Miro.com. Nothing too crazy there. But the first place I'm going to recommend before you sign up for free, you go to pricing. And all of this is stuff we don't have to worry about, which is great. So I'm going to scroll down, and down hidden amongst all of this chaos, all of this marketing material, all of this information about uses and, I'm going to go down to this piece. So what Miro has, if I click learn more, is a basically, where are we? I lost you. Now I got to find it again. About Miro Enterprise Plan. Gosh, let's do this. I'm going to go back because I've gotten lost on their website multiple times today. So I'm going to find where I had, here we go. Come on, bring me to. There we go. This is what I needed to find on this page, but because Nick is Nick could not find that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in the chat to save us, myself, whoever, a little bit of time.
And we'll put that link in the YouTube recording description later on.
Absolutely. But this is the process I went through to apply for a free education account. A free education account is very robust. I won't go into the specific details, but it's basically their enterprise version.
Nice.
There's not going to be restrictions on student use. There's not going to be like, oh, you can only have this many people in your Miro board. I'll only make this many. It's very, very nice. Gives you a lot of freedom to roam. But essentially all you do is you go, hey Miro, I am an educator. Give them your first name, last name, your education email, you know, some of the specifics, what you will use it for. I think I like wrote, I'm gonna use this for professional development sessions. That's all I put in there. And then I had to send them a URL of my school ID. So I basically put my school ID in Google, like a Google Drive,
Oh.
and then I
interesting.
sent them a link to it so they
Okay.
could see an image, and I had to set the sharing permissions.
And it also says if you are listed on like a web directory for the college, you can send that one too.
You guys will have it a lot easier than
Yeah.
me. I'm not on a directory. I'm not that cool. You're cool. Very cool. So you have to go through these little hoops. You hit submit, and like 4 days later, they gave me a Miro account just based off of the email I used here. Well, so now that I have that, if I go to log in, and you'll notice I've got some different ways I can log in. I've been super lazy and I've just been requesting a magic link to my email every time because I've already forgotten my password, but they've got this functionality. So this is one of the first things I want to note about Miro. You go to Miro.com, log in, say you're at your, you know, whatever desktop you use in the classroom. You don't have your password handy, you're like me, and you can't remember passwords. Maybe you don't have, you know, one of IT's various password keys or yada, yada, yada. I can just request a magic link. It'll send it to my inbox. And I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment while I do that so that you don't see the chaos that is my inbox. But I just click that. It's going to send something that I can essentially log in via.
Away
You're fine,
of
Jess.
the chaos.
But if you tell anybody about the chaos, that's on you.
He has so many folders, you guys.
I like your folders.
Okay, there we go. So this isn't too chaotic. I feel a little bit better.
Yeah, we just.
So this is the email I got. Here's your unique Miro sign in. So I'm imagining I'm an instructor. It's a minute before class. I need to get access to my Miro boards. You know, maybe it's I'm accessing it through Canvas. Maybe I want to pull it up just here, but I can send this link to myself and I log in. It's going to send me right there, and then I'm done. So that's one of like the little nice features associated with Miro.
And to reiterate, only you as the teacher need to do this. Students don't have to jump through any of these hoops.
Absolutely. And are they hoops or are they just kind of, you know, I view this less as hoops, but more like the standard workflow. They make that standard workflow a lot easier. Does that feel appropriate?
Yeah, I mean like the signing up and
Oh,
verifying
yes,
your
yes,
credentials
sorry.
and stuff.
A good
Students will not have to
reiteration.
do any of that.
Yes, good reiteration. This is only on your end, and then I'll show you how we share. That piece is very easy. So you can see once you jump in here, there's a lot going on, but the main things I'm going to note are you don't need to worry about creating a space. These are all the boards associated with you. This is probably the main place you're going to be navigating. You might go to recents or start if you've got specific ones you keep navigating to. But the main thing is you're either creating a new board, a blank board, or you're using some preset template. You can access any of these templates once you're in there. I don't imagine most folks will be using these unless they have very specific use cases. So today we're just going to be managing like a blank board. I'm just going to click that icon and it's going to open it up for me. So first thing it opens up is again, hey, do you want to template it? I don't need to worry about that in this case, but you can see tons of options. I think they even have some for like brainstorming. They've got education specific ones. Oh, I guess that's if you've created a team, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I think most of the ones I was thinking of land somewhere in this area, the brainstorming and presentation slides. So play around with it. But I'm going to close out of this, and I probably am just going to make that stop showing up for me, but important for the purposes of the viewer. But now that I'm in this space, I can see that here's all of my like recent boards. They'll show up on the left-hand side. I can even go home and navigate back to that dashboard, but I'm going to close this because this is the clean view that I want. And then I can do a couple of things. So if I am building this beforehand, I'm going to come over to my left-hand side of the screen, and these are all of my tools. So there's, again, templates. I can create sticky notes. So if I click in one of these, it's going to create a place where I can type.
And that is extremely Jamboard-like.
And this is exactly how we're using Jamboard. And then I can move these around. You'll notice there's a grid in the background, and you can kind of adjust how that looks. But I can make a bunch of sticky notes. I can make bulk mode if I want to type to bulk add notes. Let's go Teams. And let's go and try to imagine like what.
Team 1, team 2,
Yeah.
team 3, if you have like group projects or
Yeah,
something.
there you go. So you could kind of like give them all titles. And then. Here we go.
And it aligns them in a nice little grid for you.
Yep, so you can kind of do some fun things that you weren't able to do at Jamboard, and specifically around building this before students get in there. You have the ability to just put text in there, you can create shapes, you can do freehand drawings, which I think is very helpful for like, hey, I'm screen sharing my Miro and everybody else is in here, but I want to like point things out and specifically highlight certain pieces of the puzzle, right? I can do that. That's, me with a mouse, but imagine you've got an iPad, things work out a little bit easier. Frames I haven't found a good use for, so I would just ignore that for now. And then stickers, emojis, and GIFs are probably going to be your biggest source of distraction when it comes to students. When we were playing with this, you probably noticed you've got access to all sorts of stuff. Now, there are certain pedagogical reasons you might do that. I'm thinking of like, temperature checks and things like that.
Yeah.
Emoji for a temperature check or GIF.
Here's 3 options, put a sticker next to the one that you like or something.
Yep, and that's also a way you can create groups, like there's ways you can, I call it like kindergartening it a little bit, like choosing fun activities that might seem a little bit derivative for the college student, but actually end up doing a lot of good because it's already patterned and there's a lot of good benefit to that. And then you can make comments, which again, in most cases, I'm not going to see too many instructors using just because it's going to live with the board, but not on the board. So this is kind of the main spot I'm seeing people use, especially with it being like Jamboard. So this is kind of your space to navigate and move things around. You'll notice that we've got a little mouse that I can use to select things, but I can't move the screen with it. I have to reselect the mouse to be able to adjust that. So it's pretty much a blank slate, but hopefully your mind is starting to kind of run with, oh, I could build out all of these things, or I could use these lines to make a T-chart, for example. Yes, no, I could do voting that way. Like there's all sorts of different ways to manage that. So you could build it beforehand, or more commonly, I need a place to start us housing our ideas, which takes us to our next step, which is sharing this thing out. So you probably notice up here at the top right, we've got a little share icon. This is going to be one of the places you can name your board if you haven't already. You'll notice up in the top left over here is the other place where you can do that. But I can just say, assuming I'm making this on the fly, this is going to be like session, whatever the date is, 11/5. Maybe what the class is, let's say ID 101. I can save that. And again, that's going to be for my organization later. Miro does an okay job of organizing things by recents and starring, but it's going to be a pretty big line as you kind of build these out. But now there's going to be some stuff we have to be careful of. So right up here, you'll notice is the opportunity to enter emails in or invite via a specific, tool or copied invite link. This is mostly for like internal teams. Like if I want to send something to Caleb and he has a Miro account, I can copy this team invite link and then he'll be associated with it too. That's a very specific use case that I don't think is ours, right? We're trying to get this to students. We don't want them to log in. We want it very simple. So I'm actually going to ignore this, which is kind of a nice thing to say when we're giving these tech talks. Just ignore it. If you've got a specific use case, let us know and we can kind of work through it with you. But I'm going to go down to board access. I am the board owner. I own the board. Thank you for asking. And then down here, we have education team. Again, it kind of builds that for you when you first log on. So I'm going to ignore this again. This is what I want. Anyone with the link, that's exactly how Jamboard ran. So instead of no access, I'm going to go editor. I want people to be able to edit it. I can set a password too.
Oh, I like that. So you could share that password with students in Zoom, so some random kid in a different class could be disruptive.
Yeah, which
if you wanted to.
how often does that happen when you're sharing it in?
Yeah.
Probably pretty rare, but you might have stuff where, after a certain point, I want to lock it down for some reason.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
oh, here's our ideas.
Now
I'm
we're
gonna make them static.
Okay.
I can do that using the password. I just set a password or I stop, I just allow people to view. That's another option. But there might be a couple different ways you might want to lock things down. That's one way.
Gotcha.
But now that I've got this set, I can just copy the board link. And the board link is going to be the same regardless of what the what the settings are,
Mhm.
which is also really nice. Some things like Microsoft, they kind of like create new links for different permissions and that can get confusing. Hoping that's fixed by now, but probably not. But if you do need to go in further, there are some like further sharing settings, but again, this is like, really depends on your case. You might have instances where you want to know who people are, so you can have them add their names.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've added another layer of potential disruption, we'll say. But it's also something like, you know, if you know your class, I'd say go for it, because you might get fun names.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of times where it's like, who's Nick? I'm Nick. And then somebody's like, you know, pretending it's a whole fun thing.
Yeah.
For some people, that might not be fun. So keep in mind that by default, people can't add their names. They'll just be anonymous. But that brings up another point. Anonymity. This is a great anonymous tool. But it's mostly gonna be for formative assessment. It's not gonna be for any sort of like hard accessible material unless you're having groups build Miro boards and you make individual ones for this is Caleb's group, this is Cassie's group.
And you wanna
this is
see
Jeff's
who's
group.
contributing what.
Yeah, and then that's a group assignment in Canvas. Hey, add all your notes into this Miro board, and then we're off to the races. And they'll just need to be able to edit that. So with all of that said and done, I'm copying the board link. I'm gonna paste it in the chat for today.
Anybody in Zoom that wants to hop in and play around, you should not need an account, it'll just
Yep.
open it right up, right?
And if you could, because one of the cool things about Miro is it shows you where the mouse is of others who join. And you'll notice up in the top right, I have GB. GB's right there. I can also turn off the cursor if I don't want to see that, but it does allow me to kind of see activity. And GB in this case, who is GB? Oh, Greg. Hi, Greg. Sorry. I'm like, who could it possibly be? But I can see what, okay, good. Whew. I can see what's happening in real time, which is also really nice. A lot of these don't let you do that. But I found that it runs really smoothly. I'm running Zoom right now and I'm running the Miro board. Like that's gonna tax the computer. Miro is just really good at managing that.
And we've tested it out with multiple users, doing a bunch of things all at once, and it's pretty smooth.
Absolutely. And so I can also search people by name over on the top right, you know, if I'm, you know, just trying to see who's all in here. I get a number to see also how many folks are in here. If I'm in a class of 20 and I see all 20 are in there,
Nick, can you
great.
click on that again for just a second?
Oh yeah, of course.
There's 3 little dots next to GB's name. Are you able to like
Oh,
follow?
I can follow what somebody's doing or I can bring them to me. There's kind of a couple of different reasons you might do that.
Okay.
Like if you're presenting, because you know, when you've got access to all these tools, you might start playing around with it, which is pretty natural. So that kind of brings us to the last element that I would say. Anytime you're doing something with a space like this, you got to have good, transparent guardrails. So making sure that people know exactly what their task is, what's expected of them, how long they're doing it, and what the artifact is that needs to be completed or kind of turned in at the end of whatever synchronous session. That's extremely important. So that does a couple of things. But one, by knowing how long they have, they can start to kind of manage their time, especially if they're in small groups. And you know, thinking through that a little bit more, you know, create space in your sessions for however long is required, but always assume it's going to take like double the amount of time you think. You're like, oh, this took me 5 minutes. It's probably going to take students 10 minutes. There's a little bit of like norming that happens. Students are going to have to figure out, you know, assuming it's a group kind of material that they're working on. Hey, team 1, I want you to put your ideas down over here, team 2 over here. You know, there's instruction that has to happen, but they kind of have to figure out how they're going to manage that as a group. So anytime you're doing something like this, time is going to be very important, but then also what the artifact is, what the deliverable is, that kind of helps them keep the objective in mind, but also keep that pretty simple, chunk it up. If you've got multiple things that need to be completed, right now, I need you to put your notes in. Next, I need you to make a reflection about those notes, and those are separate, you know, engagements with this tool or any sort of whiteboard. And then kind of one of the final pieces that I would note is, again, what the full point or task is. You're going to want potentially like some sort of way of having them share out or discussing that, tell them how that's gonna occur. Are you gonna manage reflecting on what's going on or analyzing what's going on up here on the board? Or do you want each group to kind of talk through their points? Again, that kind of helps manage expectations. I love everything that Greg's doing right now because it makes it so I don't have to show any of this.
So Nick, there's also like some little buttons up in the top right corner there. What are those?
So there's a couple in here. There is a recording tool that you can use, which I haven't really played around with too much because again,
Talk track.
most of these I'm imagining are gonna be synchronous, or if you're recording, you're probably putting it into Canvas so that everybody sees it right where like the assignment or instructions for how to use this space are.
So I may not use those.
So I haven't found a good use yet, but if you do, please let us know.
Okay.
Again, I'm gonna lean on Panopto mostly.
Yeah.
But I can also like post Panopto stuff in here if I wanted to, and there's kind of a complex way to do that, but I can add media. But then there's an activity where I can kind of see if there have been comments. I can start discussions in this place. But most of that's going to be, again, if you're using the commenting tool. And I believe most of the comments are going to be specific to an area. So if I wanted to comment right here, for example, I could, and that could be a way that you're like managing conversation in space if it's asynchronous.
Sort of a peer review kind of activity that way.
You could totally do that. And the final one is facilitation tools.
That's what I was looking
Aha.
for, a timer.
So there is a timer that you can put up at the top, which again, thinking about when you've got some sort of engagement activity.
Like you can pick music, so you can give a little soundtrack. You got 5 minutes.
I didn't even notice that, yeah.
5 minutes to do this thing. That could be a good way to keep to
Totally do
manage
that.
the activities.
And then, like, for example, we've got 3 minutes left in this tech talk.
Perfect.
But then further in, there are voting tools. There's a private mode, which is like, don't show anybody what I'm doing until I turn off private mode. And then there's like notes for you.
What does voting do?
Voting, so that's a great question. I wasn't planning on talking about it today, but
Okay,
if you put me on the spot, I'll do it.
For obvious
So
reasons.
it's a test.
what the voting tool does is it lets individuals vote on artifacts within the Miro board.
Cool.
So the team 1, team 2, these sticky notes are all
Votable.
votable artifacts. These images that Greg is making are all votable artifacts. So you could, and this is where you'd want to keep things consistent. What's the task? Well, I need you to make a sticky note, group of sticky notes for your brainstorm, and then we'll have other groups kind of go, oh, I really want to hear you talk about that. Maybe
Research topics,
Research
project
topics, some-
ideas.
Yeah, but something that you would need another group or another student's perspective on, maybe even the instructor's perspective on. There's a couple different ways you could look at it. Or maybe you're the instructor and want student perspective on something that you want to do or direction you want to take. A couple of different ways you can kind of manage that. But the point is, you can give them a certain number of votes. So I want you to just vote once. Give me your favorite thing that you see here.
In the next 2 minutes, so you can set a time limit on the vote. Okay.
So here I'll do next minute. I wonder if I can do half. No, it's only in minutes.
Okay.
Oh, wait, no. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is only
Minutes or longer.
But you can also give them, like, if you want, give 3 votes, you can vote team 2 3 times.
And it also looks like you can filter what things are votable, so you can
Mhm.
just let them vote on sticky
Yeah,
notes.
especially if there's, other stuff going on, like maybe you've set this up and there's some
Yeah.
diagram you have at the top.
Sure.
Maybe for our science folks, you've created some sort of diagram or some sort of like cycle that needs to be observed, and then the individual students are creating sticky notes of their observations of that. But I only want sticky notes, I can do that. I'm gonna just say everything. And then I'm gonna only give everybody 1 vote. What does that mean? Then I'm gonna start. And so a voting session has started. Everybody should see that. They can say not now. And then I believe if they come back up to the vote, they'll be able to access it. But I've got 1 vote left. I'm gonna vote for the owl. 'Cause I like him. Cool, sweet. And so now I could say I'm done. But as the individual who's running it, I can also end it for everybody. So 1 out of 1 votes, I voted, I'm done. Maybe I'll just say end for all. Oh, everybody's voted, perfect. So now it's gonna prepare the results. Oh, great.
Nice.
and then it'll show us kind of the results over on the far right.
I could see all kinds of potential use cases for that, that's cool.
And there you go, time's up has just let me know that Tech Talk is over.
Awesome.
No, but that is Miro, so you can see there's a ton of different stuff we can do with it. I'll back out, oh gosh, there we
There's
go.
something in the chat.
I'll go home for a moment. Oh, just a thank you. Of course, Greg. Thank you. Thanks for playing. So this is Miro. We've got a great free educational license. It's not within our institution, but it's just something they provide. So hopefully that stays. That's always the concern with these tools, just like Jamboard, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But it does a lot of things. It has a lot of the common asks, does them all really well. And you can see we've got kind of a great way to track what we've been doing. And I just like the tool. It's smooth, slick, and it fits the need. So with that, we'll stick around if there's any questions. If not, have a good rest of your day.
I think we could also say, just since we're done with this part of it, we could mention some of the alternatives that we looked at and why we didn't choose them. Would that be helpful or would that be unnecessary? I guess the reason I say that, the reason I say that is Microsoft has a whiteboard tool built into it, which we have access to through our Office 365 account, and it basically mirrors the Jamboard functionality. The reason we aren't advocating for that one right now is our institutional sharing permissions do not allow people to access it if they're not logged into one of our accounts, which I think is a big barrier for students. You could use it, but every single person using it would have to be logged into a CCS email or their Bigfoot email. So you could do it, it's an option, but it's not nearly as accessible for this kind of use case.
Yeah, well said. And that's kind of the biggest thing. And when we're talking about accessibility, we're not talking about just like screen reader accessibility. We're talking about like how easy is it for a student to just log on their phone in class? This is really easy. Go to Canvas, hit the link, or here's the link.
Zoom chat.
Jump into it.
Yeah.
So that's why we really liked this one. And then we also tested out, what was it?
Tested out
Fig
Figma.
Jam.
Yeah, Fig Jam from Figma.
That was right.
One of the problems with that is another accessibility barrier. You have to, your students, in order to access all of the features, would need to prove that they were students.
in the same way that the instructor had to for this, they would all have to, and that sounds like a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah, and there was also a heavy lift on the instructor side, around providing your information to the company that we were uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
So.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Well, here, I wanna close this down because we're at least past time. So if you do need to leave, please, otherwise we'll keep answering questions. I just wanna make sure that
Do you want me to end the stream first, or are they?
They're related
Oh,
to
okay.
Jamboard.
so then let's keep going. Awesome.
So I was a avid Jamboard user,
Yeah.
so although
An
I was-
avid jammer, you might
I
say.
really was, especially
Jam
in the
was the best.
pandemic. So when you were on the Post-it notes, did I see there's a hyperlink adding option?
Click into it. I believe if I create this, you're gonna
So-
have a full rich content editor that does include a link option.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember if you can put images in here. I
Yeah,
think
cause you could
media,
with Jamboard.
I think with media, you're gonna be,
Looks like not in a
Yeah.
sticky note, but you can add media separately.
yeah, that's where I gotta remember, yeah. So tools, where's my media diagramming? Oh, I did not know it had an
I
accessibility.
was gonna ask about
tracker.
that too.
That's awesome.
Okay.
But there's upload image from
Okay.
Google Drive and more.
This is how we add, by the way.
iframe.
Yeah, this is what images and icons.
So they have pre-made ones, but it looks like you can also just upload your own
Upload
images.
your own,
So,
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, cause that was, so I used to use it, and this is what I'm trying to
You can
figure out
also just
if
create
it
your
still
ones.
works.
Mhm.
So I used to use it where I would have students in my math classes do like a card sort. So I would upload an image of a graph and a table and an equation and a verbal, and then they could drag them around and move them. And I think with Jamboard, one of the negatives was that I doubt it was accessible in terms of like the images, cause they were just like screenshots and photos that I was just kind of putting in there. But it looks like if you can add an actual photo, I'm wondering if that means you can also alt text it. Because they do have that accessibility checker, so it's making me wonder if this is gonna be a more accessible tool.
I did that the other day. Now I'm trying to remember how in the world I added the image.
It looked like.
So I think lower down there was upload image options, media.
Right
I
there.
went right past it. That's upload from Google.
It said Google it more, I bet
Oh,
it
it
is
did say
also
more?
just
I'm
like.
sorry. Oh, there, you're right,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
upload from my
My
device.
device, what's my most recent image that I did? Oh, great example. Sorry, it's an SVG, so it's gonna look a little funky. Like it's got transparent background and it's massive. But I can
So
add
you
my
can add
alt text
That's
here.
great.
That's nice.
It's
Whoa.
also got, I forgot about this, it's got Miro AI, which essentially does some like shorthand things like alt text.
For complex images, I'm sure it's not perfect, but it might be helpful.
Starting point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, let's see, yeah, you can download. Oh, and then, let's do this, I can, gosh, what was it? I think I can create, like, if I go to the GIF, I think I can even do it there. Let's see. It's appropriate. Voting day. So, I thought these had alt text associated with them. That was the thing I was trying to remember, if there was like a way that I could see that. Nah, maybe not the GIFs. Anyway, that's me just not remembering really too much about the GIFs, but that's okay. But the point is, I can add these images and the resizing is really nice, just the way that this runs. Again, it's super responsive with that. And again, further editing options over here on the right.
So another question I have, you answered 2 out of the 3 in this,
Okay,
but
yeah, what was the
the third one was with Jamboard, so what I used to do is have like different student groups were assigned different slides, so group 1 would be slide 1 and group 2, but this looks like it's all just one board. And so I'm just wondering about that, cause like I could see I could make
Yes.
columns for different groups, but then I'd worry that they don't have enough space.
Yeah, so you can make new boards within a, so it's not within a board, but like parallel. I think that's where they like to use frames, where they create like specific spots that you can
Right.
navigate to.
Imagine you could set up like 3 different boards and then one
And
frame, one big board, and then you have 3 frames within that and that.
And
That
you
might
can
be one
link
way
to
to do
those.
it.
Okay.
I think, yeah, you might even,
It sounds like that gets a little logistically complicated though.
you'd probably wanna go with 3 different for each group. Group
Group 1,
group
here's your
2.
link, group 2, here's your link.
Sure, and just like put that in, if you were on Zoom or something,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
chat and be like, here's your.
Mhm.
Either that or just.
Or Canvas assignment.
Or just break up the one Miro board with like lines or something, and this is your quadrant, this is your quadrant.
The only problem with that is like when I would do it in my asynchronous online classes and use Jamboard, cause their groups would meet live usually, and then. They sometimes would have to add an extra slide cause they need more space, so if I'm restricting them to like a line spot and then they
Gotcha.
need more room, that would be my.
Yeah. I
concern.
mean, one thing about Miro is, because we were playing with this, you can,
You have
have quite a lot of
infinite space. So I am so far away from anything.
so really you could just do an XY center point and then they
Yeah.
could expand out as far as they wanted, potentially.
Yeah, and then I believe there is a way to like. This is where I'm trying to remember, navigate people to specific spots. I'd have to look for it, but
Thing, right?
it follows you when you're in it.
Oh, but you can bring other people to you. and have fun.
Yeah, and I thought there was like a, hey, here's this place.
Start view.
Start view. Oh, yeah, so this is where individuals will start when they jump in and it does it kind of automatically, but man, I thought there was one that you could make multiple. Maybe that's just my brain not working, functioning. I think that might be just it is the start view. But once somebody's kind of used to this space, you might be able to kind of link them to certain areas. And I could have sworn, yeah, and you can lock items and you can kind of put them in layers in ways that can kind of keep them from being adjusted if you've got like a certain template that you want.
But the workflow would
This
be-
is what I was looking for. So,
Oh,
This is how you can link to an object. Confirm,
Oh,
and then this is that link to it.
oh, so you can put that link in the chat and it'll zoom you
Yeah.
straight into that one thing.
And so you notice it updates my my URL, and this is what I pulled from. And it should send me right to that graph. There we go. Sorry, it took me a little bit. I knew it was freaking in
Inboard
there.
links for each
but-
group.
Yeah,
So it's
so
all on one board, but it zooms them into their area.
yeah, you'd make like a title. Group 1. Make it big. And I don't think we've got, yeah, like put it in a box or something. There. Now it's sticking out. By the way, Control Z works. But then, yeah, this is where I would then. Yeah, link to, that's the one I was looking for. Click it, here's my link, confirm, and I've got this little anchor that I can navigate to and it updates. Then, this is what I save as my little. Take me to group 1. Thank
So-
you, Miro.
So I think there are
You
solutions,
don't have
but the
to talk
workflow
to
would be
me.
different than it would have been in Jamboard.
But yeah, you could, again. Have it pretty linked out. You could even probably put a whole course's materials. Group materials in this sequentially. You know, you zoom in and have
Some of
it.
those templates were pretty vast.
Yeah.
So I think you can design.
This is an infinite space. You can just keep moving over and over and over and over and over and over. And over and over and over.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's Miro. And like we probably just noticed, we're at 140. This thing's got depth. So as you play around with it, you'll find more and more things. So
Very cool.
with that, I'll stop the share. I'll let folks go. They're still here, and we thank you for spending a little bit more time with us answering and asking questions.
What's our Tech Talk next week?
Great question. What does the board say?
mid-semester surveys,
Ooh, that's Cassie's one.
right, iterative feedback.
It's semester surveys.
All right, I'm ending the stream. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks all.